might be the difference maker right there. I've actually not hit that well at all, and it's matched the best 5-iron I hit. Spin rate 5600, so you get a little bit more spin. Obviously I hit that one in the heel, but from a distance perspective, 192, I've really not lost much at all. Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. So we're actually just following on from a video we've just completed where I ran through my wedges into my irons, and we showed you guys how I gap that part of the bag for me, how I kind of start to build out the meat of the golf bag where you know you've got your irons that are going to go a certain distance. And within that video, we spoke a little bit about how you progress out of the irons and in towards the woods, and you've got sort of this transition between the long irons, the 4 and 5, which for me are hollow body long irons that give me a little bit more energy and a little bit more ball speed, into 2 hybrids, which I've really never carried hybrids at this loft before. I've at different times in my golf life had 3 hybrid, I've had 2 hybrid in the bag. I've certainly never carried a 4 and a 5. I've certainly never carried them together with the thought that potentially my iron set could even start at a 6-iron. So we're going to run through that today. We're going to hit them side by side. We're going to talk to some of the features and benefits maybe of going with hybrids, and maybe some of the benefits of why you would want to go with irons, and talk about that to help you guys decide what's best for your game. All right guys, 2 clubs, Mizuno 245, Titleist GT3, a shape that I love. I also love the ability of having weights within the clubs as well. I really like the positioning of the adjustability from a CG perspective, being able to sort of have that heavier 11-gram weight out in the toe just to increase MOI. And if we look at the body of these 2 clubs, obviously significantly wider, even though this is in hybrid terms a very small footprint of a hybrid. When you compare the footprint of the iron to the hybrid, it's obviously not even comparable from a forgiveness standpoint, an MOI standpoint. The centre of gravity pulled further back because of the depth of the body from front to back. So you're going to get totally different ball flights from it, and you're going to get advantages from one versus the other. For me, one of the reasons I've never really gravitated towards higher lofted hybrids, it's probably because I don't do a great job of controlling my loft. My loft tends to sneak high rather than sneak too low. Some people, if they're a bit more of a squeezer and maybe they've got fast transition and they really sort of pull that handle into a very compressed impact position. That's not me. I'm the other way. I get slightly flippy and tend to add loft. That's why I do quite well with long irons versus hybrids. But as my sort of swing is evolving, I'm actually starting to find myself in that window of maybe being a little bit better at impact and having a bit more compression. So I wanted to have these options in the 4 and 5 hybrids, which are 21 degrees aloft, exactly the same as the 4-iron that I carry. And the loft on my 5 hybrid is 24, which is 1 less than my 5-iron, so 25 degrees. So let's start off with the 5-iron. Let's hit that one first. We just, as I say, went through the gapping video, and we know that this is about a 130 ball speed club for me. Then we'll compare to 5 hybrid. We'll go 4-iron, then into 4 hybrid. All right, guys, so 5-iron, 120, 8.4. ball speed, and we've left in a few mishits in there with this one because we're not just showing you what well-struck shots carry and things like that. We're actually looking to see, is there a real true winner between 5-iron and 5-hybrid for me? Is there a dispersion winner? Is it an apex thing? We were 106 average peak height there. The best one's exactly where we were on the gapping test, about 114. The carry distance was 195, again, very similar to the gapping test. But I want to see if there's, over the piece, over 6-7 shots, does one tend to show a clear advantage over the other? So, yeah, not a club I'm really used to having. You know, I think looking at players like, you know, Joaquin Niemann, and, you know, I think he uses a 5-hybrid, you know, that's, you know, similar shaft to this. And it's interesting that even the best players in the world are looking for that advantage when it comes to the long iron part of the bag. All right, let's see what we've got with this one. Might be the difference maker right there. I've actually not hit that well at all, and it's matched the best 5-iron I hit. Spin rate 5,600, so you get a little bit more spin. Obviously, I hit that one in the heel, but from a distance perspective, 192, I've really not lost much at all. Away with that one. I've a helicopter to finish and everything. And it gives you a different window in terms of the flight. That's averaging 120 in terms of peak height. I mean, that one there, 134. If you need the true moon ball that lands at 52, you know, degrees and just sits down, you know, from 200 yards, this is the answer to that. Lots of people watching this will be like, well, I can't hit my long irons high, so that seems like a bit of a no-brainer. Swing, just up there. So I hit the last two pretty well. I didn't hit, you know, the first couple wasn't as good. Well, probably the best swing of the lot. Just height-wise, it is up there. I mean, 18 launch, 5,000 spin, carries 200. So I think if we look at the comparison between these two, you know, in terms of how it gets there, two different ways, and we'll look at that in a second, but obviously the hybrid produces more speed. It needs that because it has more launch and much more spin. The consistency in the iron from a standard deviation perspective was a little better. Only half a yard in it when it comes to the carry number. We've got about almost 20 feet of difference, and then we've got 49 angle of descent versus 45. Yeah, again, functionality, what's your need for the club? Are you going to use it exclusively for, you know, long second shots? Is there ever going to be a time where you need a 4-iron off the tee somewhere? I don't know if I'd fancy hitting too many 4-irons off the tee with this one. I would fancy chasing my 4-iron a little bit off the tee, but again, you know, we'll make that decision. So if we go and look at the dispersion table, obviously three good ones, little draws, which is kind of what you'd expect to see from me. A bit of a miss to the right, you know, call it an outlier. It's you know, but it's still in there, still one that I kind of hit. It still hit the green, which is fine. I certainly, you know, you've seen the first few swings with the hybrid, whether it was an adjustment period from, you know, swinging the 5-iron to the hybrid, they weren't my best swings. But if we sort of deselect the iron and now select the hybrid, you'll probably see a bit more consistency in terms of the flight. It didn't really have as big of a miss in it. A little bit of a tighter circle, and then if we overlay them on top of one another, you can sort of see that. So it missed less left and less right. That's a bit of what we're talking about in terms of the opportunity, the sort of forgiveness that you're going to get from a hybrid. So, but it's not, you know, we're not looking at this like if we're playing simulator golf, like maybe that's a good way to explain it. If we were playing sim golf, no brainer for me, hybrids get in the bag. But it's not just the dispersion left to right we're interested in. There is a a vertical component, do I always want to hit, or the average, peak height in this to be 125 feet? I kind of like the idea of being able to hit it at 60 feet. If I'm going and playing different courses or it's blowing, 30, 40 miles an hour one day and I really have to flight it down, I don't know if I would fancy the job, with the 5 hybrid. So pros and cons when it comes to that. But I've certainly never considered changing a 5 iron out my bag as much as I am today. And you can see a little bit of that. So let's look at the 4 iron. All right, out of the 5 hybrid and 5 iron into the 4 and 4 hybrid. Let's start with the 4 iron and see what we get. A little bit leaky right this time, this one. All right, guys, 4 hybrid. Let's see how it compares. We're about 212.2 on the carry, 136 ball speed. Good numbers. Actually, interestingly, created a bit more spin with that one. 3,900, it was leaking a little bit to the right, which is fine. We're not, as we said, we're not looking for the best examples of how I would hit, all these clubs. We're looking for a wide sort of example of how I would hit them. So left and right. Okay, 4 hybrid. Let's see what it does. A swoopy one, but what an excellent example of why you may want something more forgiving. Still flew at 127 peak height. Really, really good carry number. I've whacked that out the toe there. Lost 5 miles an hour ball speed versus the previous shot. And I've actually picked up a little bit of carry. Went back. I can't believe that's coming back. All right, guys, so we've got our 2 irons at the bottom, we've got our 2 irons at the top. Like we said, the 5 iron and 5 hybrid, very compatible in carry, as were actually the 4 iron and the 4 hybrid. So really, it's from a gapping perspective, it's not a difficult, or it's still a difficult decision. It's not like it's self-explanatory. When we get over into sort of the spin, obviously much more spin. If we look at the 4 hybrid to 4 iron, we were about 500 more. 5 hybrid to 5 was actually 900 more. Peak height, 114 with the 4 iron. Because I left the face a little bit open in a couple of those, I retained a little bit more of that peak height, but you still see, 12 feet higher with the 4 hybrid. Ball speed wise, obviously gives you a different opportunity. 138 versus 136, and then 133 versus 128 on the 5s. So yeah, there's definitely a difference. There's a height window. If we can go over to the dispersion circles now and take a little look at those. Okay, so as we saw with the 5s, you know, bigger dispersion circle in the 5-iron, add in the 5 hybrid, it gets a little bit tighter as we can see, but really not much of a distance. So if we, you know, we deselect those ones and add in the 4-iron, we did see a little bit of a bias to the right-hand side, you know, whether that's me or whatever, but, you know, I'm likely to hit them a bit both ways. You know, no issues with the result there. And then the 4 hybrid, how does that sit in the mix? Yeah, a little bit more of a spread, less to the right. It turns over a little bit. That's something you'll see, guys, as the center of gravity gets further back with the golf club. Everyone has talked over the years about hybrids having more of a tendency to draw. With a hybrid like this, with lie angle adjustability and adjustable, you know, weighting, i.e. CG, we can definitely influence that rate rotation. So I'm definitely more likely, I think, to hit the draw with the hybrid if that's the desired shape or not. So, truth be told, I'm probably not that far forward or any further forward in terms of the decision-making process. I think it's fascinating to see that there's not that big of a difference between a 5 hybrid and a 5-iron, and a 4 hybrid and a 4-iron as well in terms of the distance that they fly. Really, it comes down to what are the sort of flight options in terms of the peak heights. One thing I think about as well, as I talk about it, because we're hitting this off a very clean lie. If we go into some nasty lies, you're going to want the hybrid for the slightly sort of shallower face sort of height. If we take the 4-iron, we'll look at the face height on a 4-iron versus the face height on the hybrid. You imagine you're going through some two and a bit, you know, inch thick rough wet. What would you think would get through the rough a little bit easier, a little bit better? A tall flat face or a more curved sort of more contoured shallower face? Well, it's going to be the hybrid, isn't it? So when you've got that spin up your sleeve, you've got more ball speed at your disposal both times. You've got a little bit more spin. In those conditions, you're absolutely going to want to favor the hybrid over the iron. That's why you might see some guys when it comes to these majors, Oakmont in the US PGA coming up. I think it's the PGA. Quail Hollow is where the PGA is. Oakmont is where the US Open is this year. You're going to see some really gnarly rough at Oakmont this year. We're here up to maybe 5 inches in places. You're going to see some of these 9-woods, obviously Tommy Fleetwood, Adam Scott, Dustin Johnson, some of these guys that are going really, really narrow in the head sort of profile or shallow in the head profile and a little bit wider front to back, creating lots of that spinning up with it and obviously lots of speed. So great options, guys. I think we have to be more thoughtful about the bag composition than ever before, and hopefully this is another example of that. There's times when I've expressed my love for long irons and even driving irons, and now I'm warming much more to the idea of having a little bit more of a, you know, spinnier flight when it comes to those long clubs because I have more ball speed up my sleeve. So what are your thoughts? At the end of the day, I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think is best for your game? What do you see when you see a set of results like that? My instincts and my preferences are going to be different from yours. So I may interpret the data slightly differently in terms of what I like to see. And you guys might see something completely different that you go, no. You know, don't play those spinny hybrids, you know, in the wind, that'll kill you or whatever it may be. Always love to hear your opinions, guys. The debate is what makes this community special. And everyone having different opinions is obviously a good thing. If we all thought the same thing, then, you know, it wouldn't be much fun. So let us know in the comments below your thoughts. I certainly have some food for thought now between the two ends of the bag, and who knows, God forbid that I would change the bag frequently. Who would have thought it? So let us know what you guys think. I will let you know how my decision process progresses. Stay tuned for that. We'll see you again soon.